You are live.
Okay, we're live. Commissioners and John, I'm going to quickly uh, restate more briefly what I said a moment ago, and then we'll talk about what John just added about the reason there's a simultaneous meeting by the Planning Commission at this time. The city code requires that zoning changes be submitted for recommendation of approval or disapproval to the Planning Commission. The city code does not require that a zoning change, even within the historic district, be referred to the HPC. The current procedure has been to some previous administrations have, without that legal requirement, still asked for the comment from the Historic District Commission if a zoning change is thought to have a potential significant impact
All
on
right,
the
in
historic
the
district.
historic district.
Yes. Okay. So we're really talking about a narrow thing. And the reason that the Planning Commission is meeting simultaneously is that they already reviewed the ordinance. I don't know, John, I can't remember
Let me see, it's ordinance 1425, 1425.
yes. And they are reviewing it for a second time because they held a meeting, what, 2 weeks ago or last month, whenever their previous meeting, they voted and had a 3-3 vote, which is a defeat of the proposed zoning change. Their recommendation is for denial, but there were serious technical problems. Two remote participants didn't clearly hear the motion and weren't clear on what they were voting on. So that's the only reason they're hearing it again. We don't know what the outcome will be, and we don't have any input uh, specifically on the zoning change request. But what we need to deal with, what we need to think about is that past administrations, when zoning change might have a significant impact on the historic district, they have referred it to the commission for comment. And that's all we can do is make a comment. Currently, Mary was asking the question about what the current procedure is. In addition to that, the John, I don't think it's required by code. I may be mistaken, but the mayor refers it to appropriate subcommittees of the council. It's usually economic matters, isn't it, John? Or is it? I don't know if they have a rules and procedure, but anyway, so it does go by custom, I think, more than by precedent, more than by legal requirement. So what we're dealing with is an ordinance that, John, I'll ask you to just briefly summarize, that seems to potentially have a very major impact on the historic district. And we need to think about what we as a group should do to ask that it be referred to us, just for our comment. Okay? John, you want to quickly summarize the ordinance? It'll be
Uh,
easy to understand.
well, the portion of it that is relevant to the historic district um, deals with specifically a single block on Dock Street. And that block currently begins at Sophie's Crepes. And even though it's not specifically written, it really ends at the Burtis House location. And the proposal is for a few things. The proposal is, and I sent out an email about this, but it's essentially for an increase in height above the current allowable 28 feet at the cornice height, 38 feet at the peak of the roof. And the increase suggested is for an additional 10 feet in height. And so that would be 48 feet. And that would be over 20 and the aggregate 25% of the aggregate footprint of any structure. So if you will, imagine latitude 38, and the square footage of that and its addition, I think it measures 250 feet in length. And I think it is about 60 feet wide. So it's a very big building. So this would allow for the equivalent of another story on top of the building, and that would be up to 48 feet. Um, so then there is an additional provision for a 5-foot penthouse or mechanical override. So that would add an additional 5 feet of height to the 48 feet, bringing it up to a total of 53 feet, as opposed to 38 feet. It's a fairly substantial increase. Now, the two things to consider about this particular spot are, one, with the proposed park, when it's in place, there will be a frontage elevation on the park. And I am pretty sure that that is the frontage elevation that this ordinance will want to use. In other words, let's say this passes, it's allowable to build up to 53 feet. On the back, on Prince George Street side, there are no plans to elevate the back of Prince George Street at this time. So I believe that that is lower by 4 feet. It might be 5, but it's certainly there's quite some distance. So that would increase the height on the Prince George Street side to around 57 feet. A pretty substantial increase from 38 feet, almost 20 feet on one side. So it is significant that we haven't been asked for comment. And since this is the first time the HPC hasn't been asked for comment, I think that it's important for us to find a way to be included in the process in the future, and not have to ask permission.
That's pretty much it in a nutshell. And I saw Mary's hand there. I think we need to not dwell too much on what you may have heard about what might happen on the site. There is no application in front of the city at all. And so we really would just be speculating, and I think muddying the waters. But certainly, if you have questions so that you better understand the possible implications that John sketched out, now would be the time to ask them. Mary, did you want to ask a question?
Yes, so I don't really understand what this would do to the Maritime Welcome Center should that ever get built, because it seems to me like, so will that then have looser regulations also or not? That will then be, lower in height than some new building?
Well, that's a really good
That is a
question,
good question.
because no, it would have a substantially increased height limit. Although I don't know that anyone would want to go back to the design table.
But that's very strange that this is coming after that.
Yes.
Yes. And that
Well,
is exactly,
this has been 10 years, 10 years. Like I don't know if it came after.
we all know why this is happening and what has been much discussed, as Cecil just mentioned, for the last 10 years happening on the site. But I think it's important that we do two things, that we not get into a speculative discussion by asking for and receiving the reference to us to review and discuss and comment. We would talk about the things that Mary raised. It would still be a little, I think, more than we want to bite off to talk about anything specific. But that's exactly the kind of thing that, the building's been approved. What happens if now there's new regulations, and what would that new set of regulations mean for the whole city dock area or any part? there's a lot of questions about whether this is even something that will ultimately succeed. But I think because we're we're nearing the end of one administration, we probably will shortly be working with a new administration in December. There's no reason to fight larger battles. We simply want to establish the past practice of making referral to this commission for review and comment for significant legislation that affects the historic district. Does anybody else have any questions of John?
I do, but I don't know if Commissioner Groff does. I don't know if he
Yeah.
muted himself on
Eric, are you-
purpose or not.
Yeah, so we're not making comment. We're asking for them to ask us for comment in the future. That's
No,
what we're
what I'm proposing is that we ask for the opportunity to review and comment on this ordinance
Oh, okay.
before it's voted on by the council.
okay.
And it's my idea that our review and comment should be automatic.
Well, that's the next step, which I have discussed with John and now will mention to you. That would be a legislative act. And I think it would be best undertaken with the new administration.
I
Agreed.
do have a question. So from what I understand here, none of Ordinance 01425 changes the process for our commission. And my understanding is that any new project in the historic district that changes the design or, and yada, yada, all of the rules, still has to come before us. So any project that might want to take advantage of a legislative change, whether it's this one or another one, would still have to follow the same application process through HPC, and they would still not be able to proceed without our vote. Do I understand that correctly?
That's correct.
Yes, you do, but the larger issue is if they change the height limit this much, then we would be bound by that because it's within the historic district.
Well, but we have our own individual set of guidelines, but I understand what you're saying in terms of just changing the height restriction in general. But I think height also has to do with design and proximity. So I think I think there would be some like I guess what I'm trying to think about here is like, does this change the authority that we have as a commission as a whole, whether or not there's a requirement to comment on these? And from what I see, this legislation doesn't change our authority. And I don't know that we need to add another layer of bureaucracy, in my opinion, just for legislation to be passed. If there was legislation that impacts our authority, then I think that's a really important thing that we should, but anyway.
Well, that's a very cogent, I think, statement, Cecil, and that is the main, I think, concern and reason for not submitting it to us at this time, because it adds, quote unquote, another layer of regulation, and another process that might not be accomplished in a timely manner. So, yeah, that's sort of the other end of the spectrum in thinking about whether we should request that this be submitted to us at this time or at any future time.
So what happens tonight if planning either approves it or doesn't approve it? If they don't approve it, what happens?
If they don't approve it, it's legally impossible for they have the final authority on zoning changes. So if they vote to deny, it dies.
It doesn't go back for another round of revisions? Okay. So that's a pretty critical step.
Oh, yeah, it's the most critical step. And you can't reintroduce for a year. I don't think, John, you can't reintroduce anything unless there's a substantive change.
Wow.
Well, I think that that's correct, but I also think that there is going to be a date cutoff. I don't know exactly when it is for proposing legislation with the current administration.
Yes,
Oh.
that's the other end of what's happening.
I was gonna say, I heard that was like now, like I thought it was the middle of June. So that's why I was surprised to see this.
It's very soon. And it's good that it's been raised so that we can discuss it. It is very soon, but I don't think that this is something that requires us to discuss at length because we're only making a recommendation. And the important point is that this administration and all future administrations follow this procedure. They could have sent it to us on day one when it was submitted, for consideration. It's no reason, in my opinion, to not ask for this review and comment now or any time in the future. The delay, any potential delay, would have been created unnecessarily in the way it was introduced.
And I should also point out there are 12 pages of this, and what concerns the historic district is the last 2.5 pages.
Right. Yeah, we're not going to review the whole thing. We don't have the legal authority to say yay or nay. We're only asking for, an hour of time at one of our meetings, at our next meeting, to discuss this and make a specific comment about the legislation. What we're talking about, what I'm asking us to consider and decide on a course of action, which could be we do nothing. But what I'm asking you to consider and support is just sending a memorandum to the mayor, asking for the opportunity, as has been the case in the past, to review and comment on a piece of significant legislation. That's all.
That affects the historic district or
Oh, yeah.
historic sites.
If
Yeah, what
this,
they do in parole is.
if this did get passed tonight by zoning, then what happens next? Does it go for public opinion or public comment, or what happened?
Public comment's already been heard. So this is really, tonight is just basically a revote. And it's all virtual.
Wow.
Are you asking for a motion to send this memorandum?
This is what I'm actually, thank you, Eric. This is what I'm actually asking. I recommend that I send a memo to the mayor asking for the opportunity for us to receive this, review it quickly, and in a timely manner, and then make a recommendation. So we don't have to have a formal motion. We don't even really have to have a vote. I'm simply asking you to state whether you support me doing that or you recommend another course of action or no action at all.
I support that.
I support that.
Brendan?
Yeah, I support it. It's going to change the way we do our job.
Yeah.
I mean, we will eventually be approving applications under this new standard.
Yeah.
I think height is easily the most contentious issue we deal with. And height affects massing. So yeah. I think given that it will change the way we apply, we make decisions. Yeah, I think it's reasonable to ask that we be able to comment.
Hey, John, if I may ask, do you know what is the height of the tallest building in that block?
I don't, but there's a 4-story building there, so I'm going to guess that it's above 30 feet.
Yeah, looking at it on what was it, Google Earth? I'm trying to figure it out. So
I think it's 4
I'm
Dock
thinking
Street that's the tallest.
Pardon?
I think it's 4 Dock Street that's the tallest.
Mm-hmm. Based on the appearance, I'm looking at I'm assuming it's going to be at least 10 foot floor to floor. So I'm looking at 40 feet right now. And from
And
what you're talking
it
about,
could
we're
be.
talking 2 more stories. And that would be 2 more stories for that entire block. That's significant. Very significant. If they put that whole thing in there, we've lost that
But,
end
well,
of the
Bill,
state.
I think the point though is should we have the right to comment or should we be asked for comment?
I agree, and I think what I'm saying is it's more than requests. I think it's to the point of demand. If we could do that, but with the current staffing in the city, I don't know how effective a demand would be.
Yeah, I would not couch it as a demand, but simply a continuation of the past best practices that the city has observed. And we will be diligent in being thorough, but concise and timely.
No offense to you as far as the staffing is concerned, John, or anyone else in the city who's on this call right now.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is
I'm
this-
reaching for my Kleenex.
Is this also unique in that they're asking for a change in zoning to like a very specific city block? Is that
Okay.
typical or is that very specific?
I'll take that on, and remember that I'm not an attorney,
Yeah,
but I'm going to speak to you from my 30 years of experience on the Planning Commission.
Yeah.
I think most of you or all of you know what spot zoning is, at least the concept of spot zoning. I think this meets the definition of spot zoning in many respects. And I don't think that if this were seriously challenged, if approved, that it would be sustained. But that's not within our purview. I'm only giving you that as, if you do something that is in a small area, too small, doesn't affect the whole zone, right away, you're suspect of spot zoning. If it's markedly different from the surroundings, as this is, you're even more suspect.
Oh.
And there has been much public discussion informally about what can be done there and why this change is required. That also can become evidence of spot zoning. It has to be verified, and if it were taken to court. So this is
we try to change the entire zone from C2A to MX on a couple of different occasions, I believe, and it was shot down. So
yes.
I think they probably just tried to do what they could to insert a little language into a bill that was already changing, which unfortunately happens every single day in Congress.
Oh, yes. Sometimes multiple times in a day. Yeah. So that's what we're really dealing with is a legislative process that's not unknown, unfamiliar. In this case, our purview is rather limited. We are an advisory commission with limited authority to approve, applications or disapprove within the historic district. And this is clearly beyond our current specified legal responsibilities. But I think it's important that we at least make a statement and make the request to the administration that we be given the opportunity to provide them with our advice.
Yeah.
That's all we're doing.
What scares me
John,
about this whole thing is that I picture if it does go through, we're going to end up with a downtown that looks like the inner harbor of Baltimore.
That's
Tall
what
buildings
we're
all
here
the way
for.
around it.
We can stop it from happening.
And that's what needs to be done. We got to get this thing stomped on.
But I definitely don't think we need to be in the decision-making process before the legislation and then with the application. Like, I think as long as we're at the last hurdle, I think that's the most important for our role. But I don't have any problem with you sending a letter. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But
I want to say, and I think Cheryl Wood, who's in the meeting here, might concur. Issues with appeals of decisions are now more common than we've ever had in the past. And let me say that it takes a tremendous amount of time to deal with these, and not necessarily for worthwhile reasons. And part of the challenges come in in the process of review. How was this reviewed? Who was allowed to review it? Who was allowed to comment? When did they comment? How were their comments read? Were they included in the record, and so on? And that is just the basis for a lot of these arguments. So right now, with this ordinance, something is happening that has not included the HPC, at least not in a formal voting manner, but in a
Advisory.
manner which allows us, right, to comment,
What are we doing?
not even binding. And my point is, just there you start with, well, why wasn't this standard practice followed? So now I think we need to actually standardize the practice that it
Yeah.
must be reviewed by HPC, at least for comment.
Yes. Yep.
It's just a friendly thing to do.
So I sense that everybody is agreeable to me sending a concise message to the mayor. John and I will draft that. Would everybody like to review it before we send it? Or do you trust me and John not to get into too much trouble?
Did Commissioner Wood have a question? Your hand's raised. I wasn't sure.
Who?
Oh,
Mary?
no, Cheryl's hand is raised.
Cheryl's raised.
Oh, Cheryl, I'm sorry. I didn't. You were at the periphery of my vision because I was looking towards Mary. What would you like to say?
I was just going to say that the Planning Commission tonight did vote again to recommend approval of 014-25. And they went by sections and approved each section. I think there was one section where 2 commissioners said no, and that was why we were doing the reconsideration, because one of the commissioners couldn't hear during the first meeting. So the only reason they did it again was to get that vote clarified. So the decision, or not decision, but their recommendations and their memo on this should be out in the next day or 2. So that's where they are, just to add that to the
Yes,
conversation.
thank you. Thank you.
So they voted for approval.
Yes. I think they had, we had before, but I guess nobody knew that. They had already, but they did a reconsideration because one commissioner couldn't hear, and therefore he voted wrong because he couldn't hear.
Okay. So we need to be timely. John and I will do this tomorrow.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Then I thank you for your participation, and Brendan and Eric particularly for making the effort to participate. It was important to have your input, and thank you all. And that'll wrap up our session for tonight. And please, I wasn't sure. Do you want me to send this to you when John and I are done tomorrow for your review, or do you trust us to send it on tomorrow?
I say get it
From
out.
Brendan, from Brendan, this is a no. Go ahead and send it out. We trust
Okay.
Send it as quick as possible.
Yeah, same.
good.
Get it out.
We'll do
Yeah, I
that.
couldn't hear. Can we start from the beginning?
This was recorded. You can watch it.
Yeah. Okay. John,
Could
6 a.m.
I
then
just-
we'll meet at your office.
I'm sorry?
6 a.m. at your office?
Sure.
No.
Sure. I don't know
No.
how you'll get in, but
10 a.m.
Right.
10 a.m. I'll be at your
So
office.
9 o'clock I have a site meeting,
Yeah, 10.
66 Franklin Street, to review the repointing of the entire exterior of the old hospital.
Wow. That's a
Right.
big project.
So 10 o'clock may be too early, but 10:30 should work.
You call me when you're ready.
Okay,
All right.
that's what I'll
Good.
do.
John, before you leave, or can I just ask a question about a property downtown?
Of course.
That house on right before Gate 3 of the Naval Academy that's having the big renovation done, the one that has a front lawn, and we talked about how they were in
Right.
violation of their vinyl window choice a while ago. Has that come in front of, it's
John?
come in front of you, I'm sure,
Oh,
right?
yeah, I'm
John, before you
working with
answer,
them. Yes.
our meeting is concluded. All of you that don't have a question you want to
Yeah.
address to John, you're free to leave, and I thank you for your time.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, would you like to stay live?